What is up, MFers? I'm finally doing it. I'm giving away my juice on one of my most requested videos and techniques that I talk about, and that is the old ball and chain, the Carolina rig. Yes, it is insanely boring to the untrained eye and mind, but throughout the test of history and the test of time, and forever in the future moving forward, the Carolina rig will be one of, if not the best way to go out and catch fish. So in today's video, I'm gonna break down my entire system for catching fish on a Carolina rig. I'm gonna give you my exact baits in every scenario. I'm gonna tell you exactly the rod, reel, line, how I rig this bait, how I throw it, the type of beads, clacker, leader length, everything that you want to know, including the #1 biggest misconception about Carolina rig fishing, that once I broke through this barrier of understanding, I started catching fish at a high rate on this rig, and now it's on my deck 365 days a year. Every single time I go out, I can catch fish on a Carolina rig, and I want to get you to the point where you can catch them on a Carolina rig too, very well. So do me a favor, drop a comment down below, let me know what other techniques you want to see in the future, and let me know what you learned from this video, because I think you guys are going to get some sneaky juice that I probably shouldn't be sharing, but you're going to add a lot of info to your arsenal tonight. Let's freaking do it. Okay, very first thing we're going to do is tie up a Carolina rig. And this is the one thing that remains constant for me, and that is I throw it on the exact same rod, reel, line combination, and the exact same weight 95% of the time, and always the same leader length, and almost always the same hook too. I keep it simple, and it is the deal, trust me. So we're gonna start off with the rod, reel, line that I throw this rig on. This is my Milliken rod, masterclass series 7.5 heavy. It is absolutely perfect. It's a light enough rod that you can just fish with it all day. It's not gonna feel cumbersome. It's not a big heavy flipping stick. And the biggest thing with this rod is it's got the length at 7.5 that you can move a lot of line, and when you go to bend it, that tip has give all the way to the end. This is not a tippy rod. This is more of a moderate fast taper rod that has power all the way to the very end. That's extremely important, because when you set the hook on this rig, especially how I'm about to show you how to tie this thing up, you need to have it stop. It cannot give when you get bit. This is as sensitive as rod as you will ever need, but if it gives, you are already gonna have a long leader, a fish that's swimming away from you, and we'll talk about hook set in a second, but yeah, this, I'm just gonna tell you, this is the freaking rod. I love an 8-speed reel. 8-speed bait caster for me is the deal for this, and since you're not gonna wanna lose some leverage, lose some power on these fish, make sure it is a nice one. Don't be getting a cheapo reel for this technique. Obviously, it doesn't need to be anything crazy, $700-800 reel, but I almost always, Tatula SV, TW, or Corrado, the green one, very good reels for this, the line I throw it on. This is something that's a crazy misconception. We're gonna get into that when we start talking about baits and how to present this, but trust me, this is the freaking deal. 17-pound fluorocarbon line. You can go a little bit heavier. I don't think it's necessary unless you're catching, 6+ pound fish consistently, which happens pretty rarely, but 17-pound line is the main line. Fluorocarbon, I use gamma fluorocarbon, so you can get away with 16-pound in that because it's thicker diameter and it's stronger than shit. Leader wise, we're also gonna go fluorocarbon. We're not doing mono, of course we're not doing braid, we're not doing a braid mainline. Trust me, fluoro to both, and I will pick one size lighter on my leader than I am using on my main line. Again, we'll talk about that in a second. One of the most important things with this Carolina rig, no matter what situation you're throwing it in, is to get away with as long a leader as possible. And when I say possible, that's possible for you to cast. Of course, you could fish a 30-foot leader if you wanted to, but you ain't gonna be able to cast it. And to me, the longest that you can cast is going to be about a 5-foot leader. That's almost perfect for every scenario. So I eyeball it. Sometimes my leader might be 4.5 feet, sometimes it might be 5.25. I just try to keep it pretty simple, but how I do it is I usually grab the end of the line out there. Of course, you're tying 2 knots with this, so you're gonna lose a little bit of length on that. So I'll go out as far as I'm about 6'2", so if you're a shorter guy, I might wanna go a little more. I'll go about as far out that way as I want, and then I'll go to about my left shoulder right here, and that's gonna be how long of a leader that I like to throw on this guy. It might be 4 3/4. I don't even know. We'll see what it ends up being. So again, when I'm throwing gamma on this, I'm throwing 16 pound as my main line, and I'm going 14 pound as my leader line. Yes, I did just cut it off of this 16-pound main line because it's also not that important to me, but in theory, you should be using a 1-pound test lighter, because then hopefully if you snag this, and if you're throwing in the right places, you will occasionally get snagged, you'll hopefully just lose your leader and your bait and not the whole system, because then you're saying bad words in the bottom of the boat as you re-rig it, even though it shouldn't take you that long to re-rig it. Let's rig this up and I'll show you. I swear there's some guys that think you need 3 red beads, a brass clacker, 4 green beads, a yellow bead, a small bead, a big bead, 3 clackers, a 16-ounce tungsten weight mixed with a lead split shot, and then 2 different freaking bearings. No, you don't need any of that shit. We keep it very, very simple here. Here's what we're gonna need. We're gonna need a tungsten weight. Just a plain flipping tungsten weight. Will a barrel one work? Yeah, barrel one works great too, but I keep these in the boat so I don't have to carry different types of weights for the most part, and I've never had a problem with this getting through the cover I want it to and transmitting the bottom and the bites, whatever. 95% of the time it's a 3/4 ounce. Very, very sparingly, if I'm in super heavy current or if I'm in super deep water, 30 plus feet of water, I'll bump it up to a 1 ounce. Otherwise it is a 3/4 ounce. It has to be on the bottom. It has to stay on the bottom. We'll get to that in a second, but that's the deal, 3/4 ounce. So that's the first thing that's gonna go on our main line right here. Take our 3/4 ounce weight. You guys know how to rig stuff. This isn't freaking elementary school here, right? Maybe for some of you it is. All right, the next thing we're gonna have tied on here is going to be a bead. These beads, glass, plastic, different colors, I don't ever think it matters. I go out and get the cheap red ones, and I have had problems with glass beads shattering from this tungsten weight hitting it, so I go with a plastic bead. Is that gonna give the same sound as glass? No, I don't think so. Does it matter? Definitely don't think so. So I go plastic because the durability, because I have literally had, fighting fish and you're fighting it in and it jumps and this lead weight goes down and smacks against this bead right here, shatters it, cuts the line, you lose the fish, it sucks, you say bad words again. Now, next up is important as well. A little brass clacker. I think it's brass, I'm not really sure. It's a clacker and it's round and it's just a little thin piece. That's gonna be the last thing we put on before our swivel. Now it's important to look at this, and I'm gonna link the exact one that I use. That the bottom of it that's gonna be against your knot does not have any rough parts. And if it does, you better get a little wire brush or something out there to get those rough parts off, or throw it in the freaking trash, whatever, because you cannot have that on your guy because it will freaking bust your knot. It'll fray your knot, it'll fray your line, you'll be screwed. Last but not least, important to do this, you need a swivel, but not just any swivel. You guys can probably barely see that right there because it is very, very small. That's one of the 6 cents bearing swivels, and to me this is a lot more important than you give it credit for because it is not need to be something huge. You got the eagle claw or big freaking catfishing ones at Walmart. Some people might tell you it doesn't matter, you can just go use that, and you can. I'm sure you can catch plenty of fish, but to me you're keeping this on the bottom. There's so much shit on the bottom. You want your knot and your swivel, the last thing that passes behind this big weight, to be very, very small in diameter. And I've never, ever had one fail, ever. So you're not gonna bust it off on a 10-pounder, and unless you're fishing for freaking catfish or something, 40-pound flatheads, you're not gonna have an issue. Now I tie a regular San Diego jam knot to this. You could tie a Palomar, whatever your favorite knot of choice is that you got a lot of confidence in. That's the main thing with knots. Throw something you got confidence in, we're gonna cinch it down, boom, we're done with the main part. Doesn't take as long as you think it does, especially when you're catching fish, to retie. Don't be afraid to retie, and keep an eye on your knot and your line too, because it will get frayed from all this shit that's down there on the line, and you will lose fish because of it, trust me. Now, since we have our leader here, and we have it about the right length that we want it to be, let's not waste too much of that on our knot. Let's be mindful, not have a 42-inch tag end right here. When we tie our next knot here, our next jam knot, let's just lose an inch or two on this knot. Tie that up. Again, 1 pound test lighter than the main line. You still will break the main line at times because there's a lot more stuff fraying against it. Boom. There we go. There's our leader. And now we're gonna take a hook, and I use a couple different sizes of this hook, but it remains one of my favorite hooks, probably my all-time favorite hook. No affiliation with them at all. But this is the Gamakatsu G Finesse. It's called the G Finesse hook. This is the 3/0 size. It's what I love to throw with my favorite bait. I'm going to show you in just a second. And the reason I like this is it's a coated hook, and it's very thin diameter, but it's very strong. And the fish sit right there in that bend. I almost never lose fish. I've caught giant 10-pounders on this thing, and I catch little tiny fish too. Like, you don't lose them, even though it's a lighter wire. And the reason I want to get away with as light a wire as possible is because this whole rig, this whole system is a freedom of movement system. And so what that means is you want your bait to be able to just be waving around, moving around back there as naturally as possible, because that is what sets the Carolina rig apart from any other rig that has a fixed weight or even a free rig type system or a swing head that has at least a weight right there in front of it. This has nothing for 5 feet in front of it. And so this bait gets to go back there and wave around and do natural stuff. And you don't want a thick gauge hook restricting the movement of your bait. Trust me, that is absolutely huge. Boom, while I was just here, we just tied up our Carolina rig. Does this thing sound like it clacks just perfect and you know, Grandpappy taught you to put 62 beads on there and you have to throw like that or you're not gonna get it? No, it's just, that's what I throw and that's what works. Trust me, you just freaking get that. Don't do it, don't be crazy about it, just get that. And when you get this thing rigged up on this thing and you got it about right, your weight's gonna be up there about 2/3, 3/4 the way up the rod. That's how you know you got the right length. Boom, we rigged up a Carolina rig that's juice. Let's talk about what we put on it and where we're gonna fish it. Quickly, let's talk about the application of a Carolina rig, where to throw it and how to work it before we get into my favorite all-time baits. To me, in almost every situation, the Carolina rig is the best offshore structure bait / system or the best current offshore bait system that you could possibly be throwing. And you need to think about your Carolina rig and what it is doing before you really understand why it is so effective. So the Carolina rig is good literally anywhere offshore that you could throw it besides throwing it in heavy wood cover. Don't go fish it around a bunch of brush piles thinking you're gonna get it back. Does it work around them? Have I caught fish around them? Absolutely, but you are going to lose a lot more of them. A Texas rig, a free rig, a shaky head even is better than those and gets you through the cover so much better. A Carolina rig is not necessarily a cover bait, it is a structure rigging system. So what structure is the difference is in bottom contours and bottom composition. Cover is something like a brush pile, grass, a laydown, a stump, a rock pile, but a rock pile can kind of be connected to the bottom and be considered structure to me in my head too. But what I'm saying is a Carolina rig is a structure rig. So my favorite places to throw it, if I could think of the perfect places, would be hard spots. It's not anything crazy that people don't know, but any type of offshore hardness, and what hard spots are is a very vague term, is anything that's harder than the surrounding bottom. So it might simply be a spot where it's clay bottom outside of all the other mushy bottom. And the way that you see that, of course, is with side imaging. You can see the brightness a little bit on forward facing as well, but really side imaging is the absolute key, where you're gonna have brighter returns on the bottom. A lot of times that happens, not a lot of times, almost every time you're gonna find areas with harder bottom, it's gonna be in areas where it gets washed out, and that's either by current from the creek, which was in the bottom of the lake or has a lot of current, currently has current, it's a lot of currents there. And that's what washes out the bottom, obviously, and that's another great place because wherever it's washed out means there's gonna be water moving and food being brought to the fish, so that's a great thing. Or from waves, and so of course points, areas where the channel swings in, or there's just a lot of wind that comes crashing from the main lake. Sometimes they'll be on secondaries, but almost every shell bed, hard bottom type area is gonna be main lake, and it's got some type of washout from current, from the bottom, from the river system, or from the wind. That is where the best place are gonna be to throw this thing. That might be a high spot up on top of a creek channel where the channel bent in, and up on top of it there, it's a little bit harder because it washed over the top of that spot where it bent over time. It might be just a typical main lake point, and trust me, what you're gonna wanna do is when you're scanning, don't just go to the tip of the point and look right there for the hardness. Of course that's gonna be there, but some of the really juice spots is a spot on top of a spot. It's gonna be one of those super long main lake points but a random spot you don't even know why is washed out, or it has shell that's off to the side of it. It's a little bit out of the ordinary. Maybe the bottom contours on your map is not going to be something that's going to really jump out at you. In 2025 and beyond, man, that's going to be the best possible spots because everyone has the best map chips. If you can find something out of the ordinary, whether that be shallower or deeper or just in a random spot, that's usually where you're going to find the congregations of fish and bigger fish at that. That's something that's absolutely key whenever you're fishing offshore structure this day and age with all the pressure and good pressure that we have. And so the way you're going to fish a Carolina rig, doesn't matter where you are, is going to be you're going to make the longest cast possible to get the bait out away from the boat. Set up downwind or down current from whatever you're going to want to fish and send this sumbitch out there. And when you're casting it, it's going to take a little bit of getting used to. One thing you're definitely going to want to remember is you are casting the weight, you're not casting the bait. And that seems really simple, but visually it's going to be confusing at first because every bait you've ever had, you're going to, it's going to be what, 2 feet, 1.5 to 2.5 feet below the tip of your rod when you sling it out there. And that's not even literally possible, obviously, if you have a 5-foot leader. So that's where you're gonna want your weight to be. And so once you start getting the hang of casting the weight, making more of a big rainbow overhand cast, that is how you're gonna make the longest cast possible with this rigging system. And it's gonna take some time. Don't get discouraged with it. You're gonna make adjustments with your reel. You're probably gonna blow it up a few times once you start to get the hang of it. Working a Carolina rig has to be one of the easiest things possible. And that is why people, I think, discredit it, they overlook it, they think that it's stupid, they think that it's boring. It's all those things. It is stupid and boring, and it's deadly damn effective on every fish that's near the bottom, trust me. The biggest thing with it is maintaining bottom contact, and I'll give you guys some juice right now. When I first started fishing a Carolina rig, and I think this was like reading some damn Bassmaster magazines or people talking on forums, when I was getting into bass fishing, I didn't know anything about this offshore structure stuff. I didn't have enough money for electronics, so I was just, fishing the bank, fishing bank cover. But when I started fishing offshore, which I knew I needed to be competitive, because everyone used to fish the bank, I wanted to fish offshore, and so I started to look into how to throw these offshore systems. In the Carolina rig, of course, you hear guys throwing it forever, and it's great for transmitting bottom, and it's great for catching all different fish in all different areas of the country, of course. So the biggest thing that you kept hearing repeatedly is that, guys thought the idea of having a bait that floated up off the bottom or throwing mono as your leader was going to be the ticket for giving that bait some float up above the weight. Think about the bottoms right here and some float of monofilament or a bait that floated. Getting that bait up off the bottom was going to make it super visible to bass from a distance or something. And they had their idea like, wow, that's something that would be totally different and intrigue a bass is to have your bait up here off of the bottom. That's what you need to have. And so guys were throwing floating type big worms, creature baits that floated. They're throwing damn 65-pound braid with a 20-pound mono leader and shit. That is the biggest misconception that anyone can have with this technique and any other bottom technique. I promise you, I know this because I've watched fish not eat it now with forward facing. I've tried different lines. I've tried different baits in the back of it. With any bait that is a bottom bait, a jig, a swing head, any type of fast sinking plastic, a Carolina rig, even a deep crankbait, it is absolutely critical that your bait stays as close to the bottom, as horizontal of a presentation as possible. There's a couple different baits that I'm not going to really get into right now, but I've learned that more now than ever is how important it is to have that pull point of your line as low as possible in the column so your bait's coming horizontally and it's not coming up off the bottom often. It's a huge deal. And think about all the times when you're throwing a jig and you just don't feel like you're getting good bottom contact. You don't feel like your bait's down there in the strike zone, and how much confidence you lose because if you fish a jig a lot, if you fish a swing head a lot, if you fish a 10-inch worm a lot, you know how important it is to feel that bait doing what it's doing, and that's when you're getting a bite every single time. If you're not stroking it or getting a reaction bite, it has to be on the bottom. I think the same thing with the Carolina rig. You don't want that bait floating up back there. You don't want your weight floating up off the bottom. I don't know how big of a deal it is that the weight's clacking around making noise down there. Surely it matters sometimes, but to me, you just want that weight on the bottom. That's the biggest thing, and you want to give it a second before you start retrieving it or moving it. And the best way to do that is throwing past the fish, making a long bomb cast to give you guys a chance to not only your weight goes down, because of course your weight's heavy, it's gonna sink, it's gonna hit the bottom first. When it hits the bottom, don't just like have it sink for a second, start reeling it. Give it, 4 or 5 seconds before you start your retrieve. Let that bait get down to the bottom, let it settle, let it get parallel. That's another reason that I like this this G finesse hook is it's not a big gap, and so your bait's not going to roll over. If there was a big gap, your bait on the bottom is going to want to roll over and look stupid sideways. It has a nice flattened out gap, and it's really light, so your bait's going to have movement, freedom of movement, especially when a fish picks it up, but it's not going to be rolling over on its side. A flat level bait, which we're going to get into the baits here in a second, that stay level and flat, that are the deal. That's the key. On the bottom, keep it flat, move it slow. I have seen situations with smallmouth and stuff like that where, it was kind of a big thing, and like Champlain guys used to do a lot before forward facing, where they'd make this long leader, they'd get their bait, their weight down the bottom, a 3/4 or 1 ounce weight in that situation, and they would just kind of slowly reel it in. And for whatever reason, the smallmouth really picked up and liked that. And when we start talking about throwing it in current here in a little bit too, your weight and system, if it's really blasting current, is basically going to be moving the whole time anyways. But for fishing, slack water or just a little tiny bit of current that's coming through some of these reservoirs, you're going to want to fish that thing with just drag it, 2 or 3 feet, stop. Drag it 2 or 3 feet, stop. Especially once you get it into some of that juice, you start feeling that hard spot, the fish are around. That's when I'll just pop the slack in my line just a little bit if a fish are around it, and then just hold it. And if you pull, 10 feet in that hard stuff around them fish, you don't get bit, reel it in, make another presentation. It's that simple. That is how you retrieve this thing. Very, very easy. Let's talk about the fun stuff now. Let's get into baits. There is one bait day in and day out. If you're a follower of my channel or you watch a lot of my videos, you know what this bait is about to be, because it is the only one that I feel like I even probably need for 90% of my fishing, especially in the area of the country I'm at, in the South, fishing for largemouth. This is the bait that I feel like you need. It's this guy right here, the old hog walleye. I used it to catch, probably half or so of my fish in that open that I won on Toledo Bend. I use it every single time I go out to catch fish. I literally just took this one off of a Carolina rig and retied it on. This is the bait that you need, and it does a lot of different things that it's a little bit better than a lizard or a brush hog to me, and that is because it's got these 2 different flapping mechanisms on the side of it, these 2 little flappers here. It's got a flatter body, so it's wider and then narrower when you look at the side profile, so that keeps it planing. And then these 2 tails in the end are longer and thinner than other type of creature baits, lizards, brush hogs, stuff like that. And so they have just like everything about this bait. It stays planed out level, like I was talking about. It sits level in the water column on the bottom, and any movement it's gonna have is gonna cause 2, 4, or 6 of these legs to give it just a little bit of flipping motion on there. And I mean, you're gonna rig it up just like you always do, a weedless rig. You're not gonna do anything crazy with it. Again, the size hook I use for this is the 3/0 for the hog walla. You're gonna give them a little Texpose, and boom, perfectly straight on there. Super easy rigging system. And day in and day out, you're gonna fucking smash them on this bait right here. This is green pumpkin juice. It is by far my favorite color. I catch them in, you can see that far into the water. I've caught them in 15-foot visibility with that color. It's gonna catch them year round. I mean, that's all there is to say about it. That's one of my favorite colors. Green pumpkin. It's got some blue, some purple, and some like goldish silver holographic flash in there. It's nothing too crazy, but that is so good. It's such a good bait and good color. My second favorite color here that I will throw like in the post spawn at the end of the summer sometimes, that will sometimes give me some more bites, especially if I'm fishing like some really off-colored water, is plum bug. So plum bug, plum obviously is a color it's good all the time on big 10-inch worms, shaky worms, stuff like that. That guy's a killer. Kind of a see-through reddish purple with a little bit of green and blue fleck in it. That guy's really, really good. But truthfully, if I could get away with one bait, one color that I tie it up and I throw it anywhere, it's this guy right here. It's the green pumpkin juice hog walla from 6 Cents. It is so freaking good. Now, one other bait that I will throw in the same exact situations is the 6 cents flush. And this is something that's it doesn't make a whole lot of sense when you start looking at it and thinking about it. But guys have been catching them on fluke style baits forever with the Carolina rig, and I don't know why that is. I don't know if it's because they think it's a dead fish on the bottom. I don't know if it's just because it's a longer profile, if it's got just a kind of nice, you know, flow and natural rocking motion, because I mean, truthfully, this thing has no action down there when you're just dragging on the bottom, and you do just still drag it on the bottom exactly the same. But again, green pumpkin juice, so is it because they're around bluegill beds? I don't know. That's another great place to throw the Carolina rig also, is bluegill beds. That's one of the best places, as long as the bluegill aren't ripping the hog walla off there every single cast. Or usually when they're biting the hog wall, you're about to get freaking railed on in a second. But yeah, this guy is very good on there as well. Now the reason that I always start with the hog walla and try to catch them on it, if I can get away with it, is this thing has such a small, narrow body, and even with this hook that doesn't have much of a gap on it, it still collapses so good to catch any size bass and get almost every single one of them that bites on it. This guy's got a lot more meat to him, and so I don't have as good of a hookup ratio when it's sitting on the same style hook, or even an EWG style hook. You're already at a disadvantage, because when a fish is going to eat this Carolina rig, he's going to not be just like tap tap and sit in one spot like they do with like a Texas rig. You're going to have a direct line to him with the Texas, or a free rig, or a shaky head, or a swing head. It's got all this movement that it can it can eat it and come at you, which I find that's generally what they do. They can eat it and then go straight sideways with it, and you just feel like a tick, 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 and it's your weights popping against that hard bottom going sideways, in which case you're gonna have a big bow in your line. Again, that's why it's very important to have this rod that has power all the way to the tip, and that 7.5 longer rod. So yeah, you're just at a little bit more of a disadvantage. Sometimes they do eat the flush better. I don't know why, but again, 90% of the time I'm going with the hog walla lizard style bait when I'm fishing these largemouth style reservoirs and with no current, or a little bit of natural current. That's what I'm going with. I will tell you something that I haven't experimented with, but I'm excited about the shape for the Carolina rig, is this bait right here. It's a new one from 6 Cents. It just came out as the Hondo. So the Hondo is almost exactly the same profile as the flush. It's like the exact same body as the whale from 6 Cents, but it's got some arm flippers on the side with little flanges, and the tail has a little bit of kickback there too. Not only that, but it eliminates a little bit of that gap problem we just talked about, because it has a big split belly. And so you can throw it on like a smaller 4/0 size hook, and it's still gonna have more bite. Plus these side flippers, they might not flap a ton when you're just dragging it, but it's gonna plane that bait out and keep it flat. And if you give it a good popper, it springs free from a hard bottom type situation. Of course, the side and especially the tails are gonna kick really, really nice with that as well. I'm not gonna tell you it's the best one in the world, but it definitely has potential, because I haven't used it a whole lot yet. I know it's gonna be a factor though for anyone throwing a Carolina rig that wants a little bit more of a bait fish style profile. Now, people do throw craw baits on these same situations. It's definitely, a craw with some flap on the back has been a staple on a Carolina rig forever. I outfish it in my head, and my confidence is with that hog walla lizard style, creature style bait. I've caught a lot of them on a ridge worm too, a 6 Cents ridge worm if you want a worm style profile. I just don't, I just catch them so good on that lizard that I don't throw a whole lot different than the hog walla. You can experiment with stuff, try different stuff. When it comes to the efficiency of catching fish, hookup percentage, durability, catching fish in different conditions, the hog walla is the deal for me. But there is a different situation, a couple different situations where I mix up some other baits. Let's get into those. Two different situations when I'm gonna throw different style baits. The first one is going to be a current situation for smallmouth. Now, the Carolina rig is absolutely deadly for smallmouth. It's one of the best bottom baits, probably the best bottom bait that you can probably throw, to be honest. If you're not just scoping with like a Ned rig or even a drop shot, if you're dragging horizontally and fishing current, it's so freaking good they can't stand it. St. Lawrence River, any river system, Mississippi River, muddy water, clean water, it's the deal. And there's a couple baits that I like to throw in those situations. So the first one is going to be the speed craw. You know, a little flapping style craw is absolutely deadly. I'm gonna downsize everything a little bit. I can still run on this speed craw, just a green pumpkin speed craw. I can still run that 3/0 hook, but you can run a 2/0 on it as well with the G Finesse. It's killer. The same type of stuff applies though for current, as far as, you know, the same cast, throwing past the fish, letting it wash to them. But the only thing that's different, you know, you really want to start focusing on areas where either the current is coming into a flatter area. You don't, again, want to throw the Carolina rig in areas that are just loaded with rock. You want to find sand. Sand is key. Of course, a little bit of hard bottom's okay. Grass lines with a little bit of sand, a little bit of hard bottom, absolutely the deal. Places where the current has flushed over a big flat and then is a shallow flat even, you can't throw it too shallow in rivers. That's another thing. Throw it in a foot of water if you want to. Absolutely killer. But the fronts of islands, the fronts of current where the current just hits it and it's sand or just hard bottom but not rock, and then off the backside, right up on top of the lift where there's sand waves coming off the back of it, you know, the sand kind of dunes up in those areas. I'll try to find some areas where I can show you that on Google Maps. Those are absolutely freaking killer. Throwing this thing around sand is the key to me, and around the grass edges with sand. If there's no grass, then of course it's just probably going to be a sand or a harder bottom type bite. Same deal though, you'll probably want to have a little bit quicker retrieve on the really fast current, because your weight's going to be rolling around that sand kind of and you want to keep contact with it. But the good thing is with the Carolina rig, when they eat it, they're usually going to have it, because you're not going to feel them until they really have it. It's not like a jig, you know, tap tap and then you set the hook and they just got the pinchers or whatever. By the time you're feeling it, usually they have it. And if they start going the other way with it when they bite and they just start pulling, give them a little bit of line, give them some time. You're not going to let them swallow it. Don't let them take it for 10 seconds, but give them, you know, a 2 count before you really start leaning and reeling into them. The other style bait that is absolutely killer for me, sometimes it's more effective than the speed cross, sometimes it's less, but honestly, it's gotten to the point where I'll pick it up first usually, is a beaver style bait. Smallmouth, current, rivers, do nothing beaver, green pumpkin. Usually in river systems, I add a little bit of orange for whatever reason. I feel like in my small little brain that I have confidence in that it'll work better. But just a beaver, same rig, 3/0 or a 4/0. G Finesse hook, and just let it wash exactly the same as that craw bait. Now there's only one other situation where I'll throw something different. This same situation, the beaver or the craw will work as well, but fishing a lake for smallmouth without current, I start to get things a little bit sneakier, and especially if you're in ultra clean water, that's when I will throw a fuzzy style longer profile bait. Not an actual dice, but something like this Kamushi, or any other baits that are kind of similar to that. I will throw these style baits, not the floating versions. Again, you don't need your bait floating up above your weight. That is a negative cue to fish. There's nothing else in nature that swims or sits up off the bottom like that. They're eating craws, bait fish, everything that's on the bottom. And trust me, it's just gonna get you more bites. But you have to downsize with this, you know, like a size 1/0 or even a size 1 of a owner J hook. That G Finesse works, but this kind of is a bulbous end, so you want a little bit more gap, and you want that small hook for that shorter compact profile. I work it exactly the same. I have the same leader, same rod, same line. I don't downsize my line for really clean water. I don't think that's a necessity. And again, scope and fish with it, groups of fish, offshore fish, sand fish, or rock transition fish, same type of cover you're gonna freaking wanna get them and fish this bait. That's the same type of stuff. The last final thing that you want to think about when you're fishing this bait is the hook set and getting a hook in fish. And I kind of alluded to it a second ago, but you got to think of this like your bait is going to be a lot further away from a direct connection between your rod tip and the hook than any other technique because of this long leader. And you have to be very mindful of that every time you set the hook. You are never going to slackline them on a Carolina rig. You are simply going to feel the bite. Usually it's going to slackline and come at you, or it's going to feel that tap, 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 and you're like, I think I have a bite, and it's really just your weight dragging on the bottom because they're going sideways. In those scenarios, you have to slowly reel up the slack and get to the point where you're feeling almost like, I'd say, 2/3 of the full weight of the fight of a fish before you lean, and that's when you're gonna hit them and lean. I don't go straight sideways, but pretty close, about a 10 o'clock or so hook set over my shoulder, and at the same time I'm gonna be taking up line. If it's a big bitch, it's gonna stop you in your tracks right there. That's what you want. If it's not, a lot of times you're gonna be freaking winding them quick all the way to the boat, and they're gonna come off as soon as they touch the net because they're coming at you. But again, that's where this 7.5 heavy rod, a fast reel, heavy line that doesn't have a lot of stretch in it, not mono, once again, is gonna have you catch so many more of those fish. That's all I got, guys. I hope you learned something, whether it was baits, where to throw it, how to fish it, how to set the hook, the exact rigging mechanisms, and the time of year, just everything and how effective a Carolina rig can be. Please let me know some questions down below so I can help you guys catch more fish with this rigging system. It's one of the most simple ways to fish that's so overlooked that will be super effective until the end of time. I don't think there will ever be another bait and system that's as effective offshore for dragging as a Carolina rig, in my opinion. And the baits, everything will still be good for forever. I'm just convinced of that. It's caught so many fish. I've won so much money in just small tournaments and caught so many fish that I just needed to make videos or get content because of the Carolina rig. It's my safety net a lot of times, and it's also my first rig that I throw in big important tournaments a lot of times too. It just freaking gets them. So yep, let me know what other rigging systems and fishing systems you guys want to see. Hit the subscribe button, drop a comment below. All right, peace.